Marcus Hammer Jackson wrapped his massive hand around the skinny kid's throat and lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. He slammed him against the concrete wall once, twice, 3 times, until blood splattered from the back of his skull. "You think you can walk into my house and disrespect me?" Hammer roared, spit flying from his lips. "Fresh meat pays taxes around here, and you just earned yourself a special lesson." The kid's glasses flew off and shattered on the ground. His feet dangled 6 inches above the concrete. 15 gang members circled them like hyenas waiting for scraps. But nobody saw what happened in the kid's eyes. Nobody noticed the fear drain away and something else take its place. Something ancient, something deadly. What happened in the next 2 seconds would force every single person in this prison to rewrite everything they thought they knew about power. Stay with me until the very end, because this skinny computer nerd is about to do something to 15 hardened killers that will leave you speechless. Subscribe to our channel right now, follow this incredible story to its conclusion, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this tale has traveled across the world. Daniel Chen walked through the gates of Black Rock Federal Penitentiary, looking like somebody's lost college student. 22 years old, 5'6", wireframe glasses, 140 pounds of what every predator in this facility would classify as easy prey. The intake officer had processed 4,000 inmates in his career. He'd seen murderers cry during fingerprinting. He'd watched rapists smile for booking photos. But this kid didn't fit any category he recognized. "Cyberterrorism," the officer read from the file. 3 years. "You hacked defense contractors." "Yes, sir." "You understand you're going to D block. That's where we keep the violent offenders. Murderers, gang leaders, men serving life sentences with nothing left to lose." Daniel met his eyes. "I understand." Something in that gaze made the officer's skin crawl. He'd been worried about this kid surviving his first week. Now, for reasons he couldn't explain, he wondered if he should be worried about everyone else instead. 2 guards escorted Daniel through security checkpoints. Each door clanged shut behind them with the finality of a coffin lid. "Keep your head down," one guard advised. "First 48 hours are the most dangerous. They're going to test you. Don't fight back unless you want to spend your first month in the infirmary." "Thank you for the advice," Daniel said politely. The guards exchanged looks. Computer crime. Glasses. This kid was walking into a slaughterhouse wearing a meat suit. The electronic door to D block slid open. 3 tiers of cells stacked on top of each other. Hundreds of men who had committed acts of violence that most people couldn't imagine. The noise hit Daniel like a physical force. Shouting. Metal striking metal. The constant hum of barely contained brutality. Every conversation stopped when he stepped through. Hundreds of eyes measured him simultaneously, calculating his value, determining whether he was predator or prey. The verdict was unanimous before he'd taken 3 steps. "Fresh fish," someone shouted from the upper tier. Laughter echoed through the block. Daniel kept walking. He didn't look up. He didn't look down. He moved forward like a man walking through a forest full of wolves who hadn't yet decided to attack. His cell was on the ground floor. A man lay on the top bunk pretending to read a magazine but watching Daniel's every move. "Tyler Brooks," the guard announced. "Meet your new cellie, Daniel Chen. Cybercrime, 3 years." "Defone." Tyler lowered his magazine after the guard left. He was a small-time drug dealer from Oakland who'd survived Black Rock by knowing when to fight, when to run, and when to keep his mouth shut. Looking at Daniel, he immediately saw a liability. "Computer crime," Tyler asked. "Yes?" "What did you do hack banks with defense contractors? They were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. I made sure people found out." Tyler sat up slowly. "You exposed the military. A company that works with them." Tyler studied him more carefully. The kid's voice was too calm. Way too calm for someone who'd just walked into one of the most violent prisons in the federal system. "You know about Hammer?" Tyler asked. "Who come?" "Marcus Hammer Jackson runs the Southside crew. 15 guys, all lifers, all with nothing to lose. He's broken every new inmate on this block for 4 years straight. It's how he shows everyone who's in charge." Daniel's expression didn't change. "I see. He's going to come for you, tomorrow, maybe the day after. And when he does, you've got 2 choices. Give him whatever he wants or spend the next month eating through a straw." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for telling me." Tyler felt frustration rising in his chest. "You don't understand, man. I'm trying to help you. Hammer's 6'4", 260. He's killed people with his bare hands, and you're... Small shoot. I was going to say dead. Daniel smiled slightly. It was the first real expression Tyler had seen on his face. My teacher used to say that the smallest stream can carve through the hardest mountain. It just takes patience. Your teacher sounds like he's never been to prison. He spent 3 years in a labor camp in China before escaping to Hong Kong. He knows something about difficult situations. A shadow fell across the cell entrance. Tommy Tank Rodriguez filled the doorway completely. 300 pounds of muscle and bad intentions. Hammer's chief enforcer, the man had earned a football scholarship before a manslaughter conviction ended that dream permanently. You the new fish! Tommy's voice sounded like gravel being crushed. Daniel stood and faced him. The size difference was almost comical. Tommy could have picked him up with one hand. My name is Daniel Chen. I don't care what your name is. Hammer wants to see you. Tomorrow, recreation yard, 1 o'clock. And if I don't want to see him... The silence that followed Rod was absolute. Tyler stopped breathing. Even the ambient noise from the block seemed to pause. Tommy stepped closer, his shadow swallowing Daniel completely. Nobody says no to Hammer? Nobody. Daniel looked up at him, and something flickered in his eyes. Something that made Tommy's instincts scream a warning he didn't understand. I'll consider his invitation, Daniel said quietly. Tommy's hand shot forward and grabbed Daniel's collar, lifting him onto his toes. You'll consider nothing. You'll be there or we'll drag you there. Understand? Daniel didn't struggle. He hung in Tommy's grip like a rag doll, his expression unchanged. I understand. Tommy held him for another moment, then released him with a shove that sent Daniel stumbling onto his bunk. 1 o'clock. Don't be late. He walked away, his footsteps echoing like thunder. Tyler waited until he was gone. You're insane. You just talked back to Tommy Rodriguez. Nobody talks back to Tommy Rodriguez. Daniel straightened his glasses. He asked me a question. I answered it. That wasn't a question. That was a command. Is there a difference? Tyler threw up his hands. Man, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you better figure out real quick how things work here. Hammer is going to destroy you tomorrow. Daniel pulled a book from his belongings. The cover was in Chinese characters Tyler couldn't read. Perhaps, Daniel said. Or perhaps not. He began reading, seemingly unconcerned that he'd just signed his own death warrant. Tyler lay back on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. He'd seen strange things in his 2 years at Blackrock, but nothing like this. The kid was either the dumbest person he'd ever met or something else entirely. He fell asleep that night with an uneasy feeling he couldn't shake. Morning came too quickly. Tyler had barely slept. Daniel, by contrast, appeared completely rested. He rose at 6 and performed a series of stretching exercises that looked more like dance than anything athletic. Then he spent an hour sitting completely still with his eyes closed. What are you doing? Tyler finally asked. Breathing. For an hour. Proper breathing requires proper attention. Tyler shook his head. You are the weirdest person I've ever met. At breakfast, the cafeteria buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread about the new fish who'd talked back to Tommy Rodriguez, about Hammer's summons, about what was going to happen at 1 o'clock. Daniel ate quietly, oblivious to the attention focused on him. Tyler sat across from him, scanning the room for threats. Last chance, Tyler said. Go to the guards, request protective custody. It's not too late. Daniel examined his scrambled eggs with mild disappointment. These eggs are overcooked. Did you hear what I said? I heard you. Protective custody would mean isolation. No yard time, no library access, no chance to prove I belong here. Belong here? You're a computer nerd who hacked some files. You don't belong here. Daniel set down his fork and looked at Tyler with an expression that was both patient and somehow ancient. Everyone belongs exactly where they are. The question is what they choose to do once they arrive. A hush fell over the cafeteria. Marcus Hammer Jackson had entered. He was everything Tyler had described and more. 6 feet 4 inches of pure menace. Arms like tree trunks. A face carved from stone by an angry sculptor. He walked through the cafeteria like a king surveying his domain. Every inmate either lowered their eyes or nodded respectfully. He stopped directly behind Daniel. You're the fish who talked back to my boy Tommy. Daniel didn't turn around. He picked up his fork and took another bite of eggs. I'm Daniel Chen. I understand you wanted to meet with me. The cafeteria went completely silent. No one breathed, no one moved. Hammer leaned down until his mouth was inches from Daniel's ear. 1 o'clock, recreation yard. Don't keep me waiting, computer boy. He straightened and walked away without waiting for a response. His crew followed, throwing threatening glances at Daniel as they passed. After they left, the cafeteria erupted in whispers. Bets were being placed on how long Daniel would last. The consensus was under 30 seconds. Tyler pushed his tray away. You're dead. Whatever happens at 1 o'clock, you're dead. Daniel finished his eggs and stood. We'll see. He walked out without looking back. The morning passed like a countdown to an execution. Daniel spent most of it reading and performing those strange breathing exercises. Tyler tried to warn him repeatedly. Each time, Daniel simply smiled and thanked him, without seeming concerned. By noon, the atmosphere had reached fever pitch. Word had spread throughout the entire prison. Guards were making excuses to be assigned to the yard. Inmates from other blocks found reasons to be near windows overlooking the recreation area. Everyone wanted to see what was about to happen. At 12:45, Daniel closed his book and stood. I suppose I should go. Tyler grabbed his arm. Don't, please, whatever crazy thing you're thinking, just don't. Go to the guards. Tell them you're sick. Anything. Daniel looked at Tyler's hand, then up at his face. You're a good person, Tyler. Thank you for trying to help me. He removed Tyler's grip gently and walked toward the door. Wait, Tyler called after him. At least tell me one thing. Are you really just a computer hacker? Or is there something else? Daniel paused in the doorway. He turned slightly, and Tyler saw something in his eyes he couldn't identify. Not fear. Not resignation. Something else entirely. My teacher used to say that still water runs deepest. Sometimes what looks like weakness is just strength that hasn't found its reason to emerge. He walked away before Tyler could respond. Daniel entered the recreation yard at exactly 1 o'clock. Inmates lined the perimeter like spectators at a gladiator match. They sat on benches, leaned against walls, stood in groups that maintained territorial boundaries. Everyone watching, everyone waiting. Daniel walked to a concrete bench near the center and sat down. He pulled his book from his pocket and began reading as if he were in a park on a Sunday afternoon. The watching inmates exchanged confused glances. This wasn't how victims behaved. Victims hugged walls. Victims looked for escape routes. Victims didn't sit in the center of the killing ground and read books. Hammer emerged at 1:15, flanked by his full crew. 15 men. All hardened killers. All eager to prove their loyalty through violence. They spread out as they approached, forming a semicircle that cut off any retreat. Daniel didn't look up. Hammer stopped 10 feet away, his massive frame blocking the sun. His shadow fell across Daniel like a death shroud. You've got some nerve, computer boy. Daniel turned a page. I'm almost at a good stopping point. Would you mind waiting just a moment? The yard fell absolutely silent. The guards in the towers leaned forward, unable to believe what they'd heard. Hammer's face twisted with rage. What did you just say to me? Daniel marked his page and looked up. His expression was perfectly calm. I said I'd like to finish this chapter. It's quite interesting, but if you insist, I suppose I can bookmark it. He closed the book and set it beside him. There, I'm ready. Hammer stared at him. In 4 years of breaking inmates, he'd never encountered anything like this. Fear he understood. Defiance he understood. But this was something else. Something that didn't fit any category. You think this is funny? Hammer growled. You think I'm joking. Daniel stood. Despite being nearly a foot shorter, he somehow didn't seem small. I think you've invited me here to establish dominance through violence. I think you expect me to either submit or resist ineffectively. I think you've done this many times and believe you know exactly how this will proceed. He paused, adjusting his glasses. I think you may be surprised. Hammer's crew shifted nervously. Something about this kid felt like a trap they couldn't see. You talk too much, Hammer said. Let me show you how things work around here. He reached for Daniel's collar. His massive hand shot forward, whispered with speed and power that had hospitalized dozens of inmates. Daniel moved. Not backward, not away. He moved like water flowing around stone. His body shifted left while his right hand came up in a gentle arc. He didn't grab Hammer's arm. He redirected it, guiding it past his body with a touch so light it seemed accidental. Hammer's momentum carried him forward off balance. He stumbled past Daniel, his hand closing on empty air. The yard went completely silent. Hammer spun around, confusion and rage twisting his face. What the hell? Daniel stood exactly where he'd been, hands relaxed at his sides. You're very fast, but you telegraph your movements with your shoulders. My teacher would have corrected that years ago. Hammer charged, not a grab this time, a full-speed assault. 260 pounds of fury aimed at Daniel's center mass. The kind of attack that had broken ribs, shattered jaws, ended lives. Daniel stepped aside. One moment he was in Hammer's path. The next he was beside it, watching the gang leader's momentum carry him past like a freight train missing its station. Hammer crashed into the concrete bench, knocking it over with a tremendous clang. He scrambled to his feet, blood trickling from a split lip, chest heaving. For the first time in years, fear flickered across his face. "Get him!" Hammer roared. "All of you now!" Tommy Tank Rodriguez launched forward first, his haymaker capable of decapitating a smaller man. Daniel ducked beneath it like smoke. As Tommy's fist whistled overhead, Daniel's palm touched the inside of his elbow. Not a strike, just a touch. Tommy's arm went numb from shoulder to fingertips. He stumbled sideways, clutching at a limb that refused to obey. Rico Mendez came in low, attempting a tackle that had ended dozens of fights. Daniel pivoted on one foot, using Rico's momentum to guide him past. A gentle push between the shoulder blades sent Rico face first into concrete. 2 of Hammer's best men down in 5 seconds. The remaining 13 exchanged nervous glances. Computer nerds didn't move like that. Skinny kids didn't neutralize killers with what looked like dancing. But Hammer's orders had been given. In prison, hesitation was weakness. They attacked simultaneously, surrounding Daniel from all directions. Daniel closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, the nervous young man was gone. In his place stood someone whose movements flowed like water, whose stance rooted like a mountain, whose eyes held the calm of 13 years. Training under a master who had survived horrors most people couldn't imagine, the attacks came from every direction. Daniel didn't fight them, he conducted them. Spider charged from the left. Daniel stepped into the charge rather than away his shoulder, connecting with Spider's chest at maximum instability. Spider flew backward, crashing into 2 teammates and taking all 3 down. A fist flew toward Daniel's head from the right. He tilted slightly, letting it graze past his ear, then captured the extended arm. A quick twist, a step to the side, and the attacker found himself airborne, landing hard on his back 10 feet away. Someone grabbed Daniel from behind in a crushing bear hug. Instead of struggling, he relaxed completely, dropping his center of gravity. His elbow found the attacker's ribs with surgical precision, just pressure on a nerve cluster. The bear hug became a desperate release. A massive inmate nicknamed Crusher charged with both fists raised. Daniel sidestepped and extended one leg slightly. Crusher's own momentum sent him sprawling across the concrete, sliding 10 feet before stopping. 2 more attackers coordinated, coming from opposite angles simultaneously. Daniel waited until the last moment, then dropped into a low stance. Both men collided with each other where he'd been standing, their heads cracking together with a sickening thud. Another grabbed for Daniel's shirt. Daniel caught the wrist twisted gently, and the man spun in a complete circle before his own momentum threw him to the ground. 3 more rushed him at once. Daniel moved between them like wind through trees. A touch here, a redirect there, and all 3 ended up in a pile of tangled limbs. One by one, Hammer's crew found themselves on the concrete. They weren't beaten into submission. Daniel hadn't thrown a single punch. They'd been redirected, unbalanced, neutralized, by techniques they couldn't understand. Some had no idea how they'd ended up on the ground. Others clutched pressure points that would ache for days. 28 seconds. 15 of the most dangerous men in Blackrock lay sprawled around a young man who hadn't broken a sweat. The yard was dead silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Hammer stood alone, facing Daniel across 10 feet of empty concrete. His crew was down. His reputation was destroyed. Every inmate was watching. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Hammer Jackson felt genuine terror. Daniel took 3 measured steps toward him, each footfall deliberate, controlled like a predator who no longer needed to hide. Hammer's hands came up in a defensive position he'd never needed before. His voice cracked. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Daniel stopped walking. His hands hung relaxed. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried weight that silenced every whisper. "You're right. You don't understand what you're dealing with." Hammer lunged, desperation replacing strategy. His right fist aimed for Daniel's jaw with bone-shattering force. Daniel stepped inside Hammer's reach so close they were almost embracing. Hammer's punch sailed harmlessly over his shoulder, while Daniel's hand found a pressure point below Hammer's collarbone. The touch was gentle, almost tender, but Hammer's entire right arm went dead. Panic exploded across his face. He swung his left fist wildly, but Daniel had already flowed around to his blind side. Another gentle touch to a nerve cluster near Hammer's spine. The big man's legs buckled. Marcus Hammer Jackson crashed to his knees. His body refused to obey. He tried to stand, tried to fight, tried to scream orders, but his voice came out as a strangled whisper. Daniel knelt beside him, speaking so quietly only Hammer could hear. My teacher told me that true strength isn't about breaking others. It's about knowing you could break them and choosing not to. Today, I'm choosing not to. He stood and looked around the yard. Every eye was fixed on him. Guards rushed down from towers, but they moved slowly, uncertain what they were responding to. No blood had been spilled, no bones broken, yet everyone understood that something fundamental had shifted. Daniel picked up his book and walked toward the cell blocks. The sea of inmates parted without a word. Some nodded respectfully, others stared in awe, but Daniel felt eyes on him that carried different intentions. From a window in the north wing, Viktor Volkov watched with calculating intensity. The Russian had built his empire on strategic thinking. He'd been observing the young Asian inmate since his arrival, noting signs others missed. The way Daniel moved, the complete absence of fear in his eyes. Viktor crushed his cigarette between his fingers. This changes everything, he murmured. 3 floors below, Elena Reyes received reports from her network. The Ice Queen had clawed her way to power through intelligence, brutality, and an uncanny ability to predict enemies' moves. She'd planned to recruit or eliminate Daniel within his first week. Now, those plans required serious recalculation. Get me everything on this kid, she ordered. Real background. Someone doesn't develop those skills in suburbia. In the administrative wing, Warden Patricia Morrison watched from her office window. 23 years of running maximum security facilities had taught her to recognize signs of approaching chaos. Inmates didn't accidentally neutralize entire gangs. She pulled Daniel's file from her drawer. Cybercrime. No priors. College dropout. Everything suggested a soft target who would seek protection or become a victim. But Morrison had learned never to trust surface appearances. The quiet ones often surprised everyone. Her phone rang. Warden Morrison, she answered. The voice on the other end was elderly, carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. Warden Morrison, my name is William Zhao. I believe you have one of my former students in your facility. Morrison sat up straighter. I'm listening. What you witnessed today in your recreation yard was only the beginning. Daniel Chen is not what his file suggests, and there are things about his past that you need to understand before the wrong people discover them first. Morrison looked out her window at the recreation yard below, where guards were still helping Hammer's crew to their feet. Tell me everything, she said. Back in D Block, Daniel returned to his cell. Tyler was waiting, his face pale with shock. What are you? Tyler whispered. What the hell are you? Daniel sat on his bunk and opened his book. I'm just someone who learned that the river doesn't fight the mountain. It simply becomes stronger than stone. That's not an answer. Daniel looked up at his cellmate. For just a moment, Tyler saw something behind those calm eyes. Pain, loss, a depth of experience that didn't match the young face wearing it. No, Daniel agreed quietly. It's not. He returned to his reading. Outside their cell, the normal sounds of prison life continued. Shouted conversations. Metal doors clanging, shuffled footsteps on concrete. But underneath it all, a new tension was building. Word had spread through every block, every gang, every faction. The computer nerd from suburbia had done something impossible. Hammer's crew was shattered. The hierarchy that had ruled D Block for 4 years had been rewritten in 30 seconds. And now every power in Blackrock was reassessing their position. Viktor Volkov was planning his approach. Elena Reyes was gathering intelligence. Warden Morrison was learning secrets that would change everything. The computer nerd from the suburbs had just become the most important piece on a board he was only beginning to understand. And somewhere in San Francisco, an old man named William Zhao hung up the phone and smiled sadly. Be careful, my student, he whispered to the empty room. The hardest battles are never the ones fought with fists. They're the ones fought with the heart. The game was just beginning. Word spread through Blackrock Federal Penitentiary like wildfire burning through dry brush. By sunset on that first day, every inmate in every block knew the story. The skinny computer nerd had dismantled Hammer's entire crew in under 30 seconds without throwing a single punch. Some said he was former military, others claimed he was a trained assassin. A few whispered that he was something else entirely, something that didn't have a name in English. Tyler couldn't sleep that night. He lay on his bunk staring at the ceiling while Daniel read quietly below him, turning pages with the same calm rhythm he'd maintained before destroying 15 men in the recreation yard. How? Tyler finally asked. How did you do that? Daniel didn't look up from his book. Do what? Don't play stupid with me, man. I watched you take apart the most dangerous gang in this prison, like they were children. Where did you learn to fight like that? Daniel closed his book and set it aside. He removed his glasses and cleaned them, slowly, deliberately, buying time before answering. "When I was 9 years old," he said quietly, "my father took me to a small academy in San Francisco's Chinatown. He said I needed discipline, focus, something to keep me out of trouble." Tyler sat up on his bunk, listening intently. "The master there was a man named William Zhao. He'd escaped from a labor camp in China 30 years earlier, walked through mountains for 6 weeks with nothing but the clothes on his back and a bullet wound in his shoulder. When he looked at me on that first day, I thought he could see everything I would ever be. And he taught you to fight." Daniel put his glasses back on. "He taught me to understand. Fighting was just one small part of it. Understand what that strength isn't about size or aggression. It's about knowing yourself so completely that no external force can move you from your center." Tyler shook his head. "That sounds like fortune cookie nonsense." "Perhaps, but that fortune cookie nonsense just put 15 men on the ground without breaking any bones or drawing any blood." Tyler had no response to that. The next morning brought a different kind of tension to D Block. Hammer's crew scattered to the four winds overnight. Some sought protection with other gangs. Others requested transfers to different blocks. A few simply kept their heads down and pretended they'd never been affiliated with the Southside crew at all. Hammer himself remained in his cell, refusing to come out for meals or recreation. The man who had terrorized D Block for 4 years was now a ghost hiding from the judgment of inmates who had once feared him. Daniel maintained his routine as if nothing had changed. Morning stretches, breathing exercises, reading. He ate his meals alone, declined all conversation attempts from curious inmates, and spent his recreation time on the same bench where he'd faced Hammer's crew. But eyes were watching him constantly now. Different eyes. More calculating eyes. At precisely 10:47 a.m. on his third day at Black Rock, a man approached Daniel's table during breakfast. He was compact and muscular, with intelligent eyes and scars across his knuckles that spoke of decades of violence. He sat down across from Daniel without asking permission. "You are Daniel Chen," he said. His accent was Eastern European. Russian, maybe. Daniel looked up from his eggs. "I am. My name is Alexei. I work for someone who wishes to speak with you." "Who?" "Victor Volkov." Daniel had heard the name whispered throughout the block. Victor the Hammer. Not to be confused with Marcus Hammer Jackson. Victor's nickname came from his ability to drive nails into his enemies' plans with surgical precision. He'd run the Russian faction at Black Rock for over a decade, controlling contraband information and influence with the cold efficiency of a chess grandmaster. "Why would Mr. Volkov want to speak with me?" Alexei smiled without warmth. "Because you demonstrated capabilities yesterday that interest him greatly, and because refusing his invitation would be unwise." Daniel took another bite of his eggs. "These eggs are still overcooked." "Excuse me." "The eggs. They're overcooked. You'd think a federal facility with this much funding could manage properly prepared breakfast." Alexei stared at him. "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard you. You said refusing would be unwise. I'm simply pointing out that the quality of food in this facility is also unwise, yet nothing seems to change." Alexei's jaw tightened. Mr. Volkov doesn't appreciate being kept waiting. Daniel set down his fork and met Alexei's eyes. "Then Mr. Volkov should learn patience. It's a valuable skill, especially in prison." The Russian's hand moved toward his waistband, where Daniel had already noticed the outline of a sharpened implement. Prison-made. Deadly. The movement was subtle, almost casual, but Daniel tracked it like a hawk watching a mouse. "I wouldn't recommend that," Daniel said softly. "Recommend whatever you're thinking about doing with that shiv you've got hidden in your pants. It won't end well for you." Alexei's hand froze. His eyes widened slightly. He'd been certain the weapon was invisible, tucked against his hip beneath loose clothing. "How did you Tell Mr. Volkov I'll consider his invitation, but I choose when and where, not him." Alexei stood slowly, his expression a mixture of anger and something else. Respect, maybe, or fear. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Perhaps, but it's my mistake to make." Alexei walked away without another word. Daniel returned to his overcooked eggs. Across the cafeteria, Tyler watched the exchange with growing dread. He'd hoped the recreation yard incident would be the end of Daniel's troubles. Now he understood it was only the beginning. At 2:15 p.m. that same afternoon, Daniel received a second visitor. This one was different. Female. Which was unusual since the women's section of Black Rock was completely separated from the men's blocks. Yet somehow she appeared in the corridor outside Daniel's cell as if she belonged there. Elena Reyes was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Dark hair pulled back severely, eyes that missed nothing, a smile that promised pain as easily as pleasure. "Daniel Chen," she said, leaning against the cell bars. "The man who made Hammer cry like a baby." Daniel looked up from his book. "I don't believe he cried." "Figure of speech, but close enough. I watched from the women's yard. Impressive display." "Thank you." "That wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. Compliments are earned. You haven't earned anything from me yet." Daniel closed his book. "What do you want, Ms. Reyes?" Her smile sharpened. "You know who I am." "I know everyone who matters in this facility. It's important to understand one's environment." "Then you know that Viktor Volkov sent his boy Alexei to recruit you this morning. And you know that I don't appreciate the Russians trying to collect assets before I've had a chance to make my own offer." Daniel stood and walked to the bars, stopping just inches from Elena. This close, he could smell her perfume. Something expensive. Something that shouldn't exist inside a federal prison. What kind of offer? Elena's eyes traveled over his face, reading him the way a scholar reads ancient text. "Victor wants to use your skills for his schemes. Protection rackets, intimidation. The usual boring nonsense that small men use to feel powerful. And you? I want something different. Something more collaborative." "Meaning?" Elena reached through the bars and touched Daniel's chest. Her fingers rested directly over his heart. "I know about Master Zhao. I know about the 13 years you spent training at his academy. I know why you really hacked those defense contractors." Daniel's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "You've done your research." "My grandmother was a master in Hong Kong before she immigrated. She taught me to recognize others who follow the same path. You have skills, Daniel, real skills, but your training is incomplete." This caught Daniel's attention. He stepped back slightly, breaking contact with her hand. "What do you mean, incomplete?" "I mean that Master Zhao was preparing you for advanced techniques when you got arrested. 3 years in prison means 3 years without proper guidance. Your foundation is excellent, but you're operating at maybe 60% of your potential." Daniel felt something he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. Master Zhao had indeed been introducing him to higher-level concepts when the FBI came knocking. Internal energy cultivation, pressure point combinations that bordered on lethal, the invisible aspects of combat that couldn't be taught through physical demonstration alone. "And you can help me complete this training." Elena smiled. "My grandmother left me more than just memories. She left knowledge. Techniques that she brought from Hong Kong. Things that aren't written in any book. Things that could make you truly formidable instead of merely impressive." "In exchange for what?" "Occasional services. Problems that require discretion and precision rather than brute force. Victor uses hammers for everything. I prefer scalpels." Daniel considered her words carefully. Victor offered protection and profit. Elena offered growth and purpose. Both came with strings attached that he couldn't fully see. "I need time to think." Elena nodded. 48 hours. After that, my offer expires and you can deal with whatever Victor decides to throw at you." She turned and walked away, disappearing around a corner as mysteriously as she'd appeared. Tyler emerged from where he'd been hiding at the end of the corridor. "Jesus Christ, man. Do you know who that was? Elena Reyes. The Ice Queen, she's killed 3 people with her bare hands. And those are just the ones they know about. What did she want?" Daniel returned to his bunk and picked up his book. "She wants me to choose sides. And Victor wants the same thing." "Yes." Tyler sat down heavily on the floor, his back against the wall. "You've been here 3 days, and you've got the 2 most powerful people in this prison fighting over you. How is that possible?" Daniel opened his book but didn't read. His mind was elsewhere, calculating possibilities, weighing risks. "My teacher used to say that a single stone thrown into a pond creates ripples that touch every shore," he said quietly. "I threw a stone in the recreation yard. Now I have to navigate the ripples." "That's not helpful." "No, it's not." At 11:30 p.m. that night, Daniel discovered that Viktor Volkov didn't appreciate being told to wait. He was returning from the bathroom when 3 men stepped out of the shadows. Not Alexei this time. These were different. Larger. More brutal. They moved with the coordinated precision of men who'd done this many times before. "Mr. Volkov would like a word," the lead man said. Daniel stopped walking. His body shifted subtly into a ready stance that the attackers didn't recognize. "I told Alexei I would consider his invitation." "Consider faster." They came at him simultaneously, professional, coordinated, nothing like Hammer's undisciplined crew. The first man threw a punch that Daniel redirected into the second man's face. Bone crunched against bone. The second man staggered, blood streaming from his nose. The third man pulled a shiv and slashed at Daniel's midsection. Daniel pivoted, caught the man's wrist, and twisted. The shiv clattered to the floor. A quick strike to the man's solar plexus dropped him to his knees. The first man recovered and grabbed Daniel from behind, pinning his arms. The second man, despite his broken nose, moved in to deliver punishment. Daniel relaxed completely, dropping his weight. His heel found the first man's instep with crushing force. The grip loosened. Daniel spun his elbow, connecting with the man's temple. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The second man hesitated, seeing both his partners down. Daniel didn't give him time to think. He closed the distance in one step, his palm striking the man's chest directly over his heart. Not hard, just precise. The man gasped, his eyes rolling back, and crumpled. 3 men down in under 10 seconds. Daniel heard slow applause from the far end of the corridor. Viktor Volkov emerged from the shadows, clapping his hands with genuine appreciation. "Impressive," Viktor said. "My boys are not amateurs, yet you handled them like children." Daniel turned to face him, breathing slightly elevated, but otherwise showing no signs of exertion. "Mr. Volkov." "Please, Viktor, we are going to be friends, you and I can tell." Viktor was smaller than Daniel had expected, maybe 5'8", with prematurely gray hair and pale eyes that seemed to see through walls. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had stopped needing to prove anything decades ago. "Your invitation method needs work," Daniel said. Viktor laughed. "Perhaps, but I needed to see what you could do when you didn't have time to prepare. The recreation yard was a spectacle. This was a test." "Did I pass with excellence?" Viktor stepped closer, studying Daniel the way a collector studies rare artifacts. "In Russia, we have saying, the wolf that survives winter is not strongest wolf, is smartest wolf." "My teacher had similar sayings." "Your teacher, Master William Zhao." Viktor smiled at Daniel's surprise. "Yes, I know about him. I know about 13 years of training. I know about advanced techniques left incomplete. I probably know things about your past that you've forgotten yourself." Daniel felt ice forming in his stomach. This wasn't just a gang leader seeking muscle. This was something else entirely. "What do you want from me, Viktor?" "Simple question deserves simple answer. I want you to work for me. Your skills are unique, valuable. In prison, valuable things get used or destroyed. I offer you third option, partnership." "Elena Reyes offered me the same thing." Viktor's smile tightened. "Elena is a dangerous woman, smart, ruthless. But she plays small games. I play for much larger stakes." "What kind of stakes?" Viktor leaned close, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "There are things happening in this prison that go beyond gangs and territory. Things connected to world outside these walls. Things that your hacking skills and your combat abilities would be uniquely suited to address." Daniel's mind raced. This wasn't about protection rackets or intimidation. Viktor was talking about something else entirely. "What things?" Viktor pulled back. "Earn my trust first. Then we talk about bigger picture. And if I refuse, then you navigate this place alone. And eventually Elena or someone else will collect you, or destroy you. In prison, there is no neutral ground. You choose allies, or you choose enemies. There is no third option." Viktor turned and walked away, leaving Daniel alone with 3 unconscious men and a decision that would shape his entire time at Blackrock. The next morning, Warden Patricia Morrison summoned Daniel to her office. He was escorted by 2 guards who kept their distance, clearly nervous about touching him after word of the corridor incident spread. Morrison's office was neat, professional, decorated with commendations and photographs from her 23 years in corrections. She was in her early 50s with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen enough violence to last several lifetimes. "Sit down, Mr. Chen." Daniel sat. Morrison studied him for a long moment before speaking. "I received an interesting phone call yesterday from a man named William Zhao." Daniel's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. "Master Zhao called you." "He did. He told me quite a story about a brilliant young student who spent 13 years mastering ancient martial arts, about a tragedy that changed everything, about a young man who threw away his future to expose the truth about his sister's death." Daniel said nothing. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. "Your sister Jennifer was killed in a drone strike 18 months ago. Morrison continued. An illegal operation conducted by a private defense contractor in a region where American forces had no authorization to operate. The company covered it up, paid off officials, destroyed evidence. Daniel's voice came out rough. She was an aid worker, 20 years old. She was helping refugees when they murdered her and called it collateral damage. So you hacked into their systems, exposed everything, made sure the world knew what they'd done. And they made sure I went to prison for it. Morrison nodded slowly. Master Zhao wanted me to understand who you really are, not a terrorist, not a danger to society, a grieving brother who chose truth over freedom. Daniel looked away. Why are you telling me this? Because I've spent 23 years watching this prison tear itself apart with gang violence and power struggles. I've seen good men become monsters and monsters become worse. Victor Volkov and Elena Reyes have been at each other's throats for years, and every time they clash, people die. She leaned forward. You demonstrated something in that recreation yard that I've never seen before. Not violence. Control. You could have killed every single one of those men. Instead, you showed them what real power looks like. Power that doesn't need to destroy. What are you asking me? I'm not asking anything. I'm offering. Help me reduce the violence in this facility, not as a spy, not as an informant, as something else, a force for stability. Daniel stared at her. You want me to be some kind of prison peacekeeper? I want you to be exactly what you showed everyone in the recreation yard, someone who can end conflicts without creating casualties, someone who can shift the balance of power without spilling blood. And in exchange, Morrison pulled a folder from her desk and slid it across to him. Master Zhao is dying. Liver cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I can arrange compassionate visits, regular phone calls, time with your teacher before he's gone. Daniel's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Medical records, prognosis reports, photographs of an old man who looked nothing like the vital master he remembered. He didn't tell me, Daniel whispered. He didn't want you to worry, but I thought you should know. I thought you deserved the chance to say goodbye. Daniel closed the folder. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. What do I have to do? Choose wisely. Victor and Elena are both going to push for your allegiance. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for the right reasons. Make sure it's something Master Zhao would be proud of. She stood and walked to the window. You have a choice to make, Mr. Chen. You can become another weapon in someone else's war. Or you can become something this prison has never seen. A bridge instead of a sword. Daniel stood slowly. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, but remember what's at stake. Not just your survival, your teacher's legacy, your sister's memory, your soul. He walked to the door, then paused. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Morrison turned to face him. Because Master Zhao asked me to. Because in 23 years, I've learned to recognize the rare ones. The ones who could change things if given the chance. She returned her attention to the window. Don't waste this chance, Mr. Chen. They don't come twice. That night, Daniel sat alone in his cell. Tyler had been transferred to another block at his own request, too frightened by the forces gathering around his former cellmate to remain. Daniel held the folder Morrison had given him. Inside, Master Zhao's face stared back at him, worn thin by disease, but still carrying that same penetrating wisdom in his eyes. 13 years of training. Countless hours of practice meditation philosophy. Master Zhao had shaped Daniel from an angry 9-year-old into something else. Something that Hammer's crew had encountered in the recreation yard. Something that Victor and Elena both wanted to possess. But what did Daniel want? He thought about Jennifer, her smile, her laugh. The last phone call they'd had before she left for the refugee camp. She'd been so excited about making a difference in the world. He thought about the day he'd learned she was dead. The cold, corporate language of the press release. Collateral damage. Regrettable incident. Words designed to make murder sound like accounting. He'd spent 3 months finding the truth. 3 months tracing payments, intercepting communications, building a case that should have brought the entire company down. Instead, it brought him to BlackRock. Now Victor offered power. Elena offered completion. Morrison offered purpose. 3 paths. 3 possible futures. Each with costs he couldn't fully calculate. Daniel opened his book to a passage Master Zhao had marked years ago. Words from an ancient text about the nature of conflict and resolution. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. The greatest warrior is one who never has to fight. He read the words 3 times, letting them sink into his consciousness. Then he stood, walked to his cell door, and called for a guard. I need to make a phone call, he said. 30 minutes later, he was in a private room with a phone pressed to his ear. The connection clicked and a familiar voice answered. "Daniel." "Master Zhao, it's me." Silence stretched across the line. When the old man spoke again, his voice carried the weight of everything left unsaid. "I was wondering when you would call. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Because you have enough burdens without carrying mine. Because some battles must be fought alone. Because I needed you to find your own path before I could guide you again." Daniel's throat tightened. "The warden told me everything. 6 months, maybe less. Time is an illusion, my student. I have lived more fully in my years than most do in centuries. When I am gone, my teachings continue through you. I don't know what to do. There are forces here pulling me in different directions. People who want to use me for their own purposes." Master Zhao laughed softly. "There are always such forces. In prison, in the world, in life itself. The question is not which force to follow. The question is who you choose to become." Victor Volkov offers power and protection. Elena Reyes offers to complete my training. The warden offers purpose and meaning. And what does Daniel Chen offer Daniel Chen? The question hit him like a physical blow. He'd spent so long thinking about what others wanted from him that he'd forgotten to ask what he wanted from himself. "I don't know anymore." "Yes, you do. You've known since you were 9 years old, since the first day you walked into my academy and I looked into your eyes and saw the fire burning there." "Tell me." "No, this answer must come from you, but I will tell you this. The path you choose in the coming days will determine not just your survival, but your legacy. Choose wisely, Daniel. Choose with your heart, not your fear." The line went silent. Master Zhao had hung up. Daniel sat in the empty room for a long time, letting the conversation settle into his bones. Then he picked up the phone and dialed another number. "Guard," he said when someone answered, "I need to arrange a meeting. Tell Victor Volkov and Elena Reyes that I'm ready to give them my answer." The meeting took place at 9:47 p.m. the following night in the prison chapel, neutral ground. The only space in Blackrock where gang territories didn't apply and guards rarely patrolled. Daniel had chosen it deliberately, knowing that both Victor and Elena would understand the symbolism. Victor arrived first, flanked by Alexei and 2 other men who positioned themselves near the exits. His pale eyes swept the room before settling on Daniel, who sat alone in the front pew. "Interesting choice of location," Victor said, taking a seat 3 rows behind Daniel. "You are a religious man." "No, but I respect places where people come to find peace." Victor laughed softly. "Peace. In prison. You are idealist, Daniel Chen. Idealists don't survive long in places like this." The chapel door opened again. Elena Reyes entered alone, which surprised Daniel. No guards, no protection. She walked down the center aisle with the confidence of someone who had never needed bodyguards to feel safe. "Victor?" she said, nodding at the Russian. "Elena." His voice carried ice. She sat in the pew across from Victor, creating a triangle with Daniel at its point. The tension between them was palpable, years of rivalry and hatred compressed into a small space. "Thank you both for coming," Daniel said. Victor leaned forward. "You said you have answer for us. I am curious which way you lean." Elena smiled. "So am I, though I suspect I already know." Daniel stood and turned to face them both. His heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. "I've thought about your offers. Victor, you want me to be a weapon. Elena, you want me to be a student. Both of you want to own what I can do." Victor's expression hardened. "Ownership is a strong word." "It's the accurate word. You both see me as an asset to be acquired, a tool to be used for your purposes." Elena's smile faded. "And what do you see yourself as?" Daniel took a breath. This was the moment, the choice that would shape everything that followed. "I see myself as someone who came to this prison to serve a sentence for exposing the truth about my sister's murder. I see myself as a student of a dying master who taught me that real strength isn't about domination, and I see myself as someone who refuses to become anyone's weapon." Silence filled the chapel. Victor spoke first. "You are refusing us both." "I'm refusing to choose between you, but I'm not refusing to help." Elena leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. "Explain." "This prison is a powder keg. Victor, you control the North Wing. Elena, you control the contraband trade. Other factions control other territories. Every day the tension builds. Every week someone dies. And for what territory that none of you actually own," Victor's eyes narrowed, "you lecture us about prison politics. You've been here less than a week. I've been here long enough to see that everyone is so focused on fighting each other that no one is asking the real question. What question? Daniel stepped closer to them both. Why does this prison generate more violence than any other federal facility in the country? Why do more inmates die here every year than in prisons twice its size? Why does Warden Morrison have the highest mortality rate of any administrator in the federal system? Elena and Victor exchanged glances. For the first time, Daniel saw something other than rivalry between them. Uncertainty. There are reasons, Victor said carefully. Complex reasons. Tell me. Victor stood and walked to the chapel window. His voice dropped low. 3 years ago, before you came here, there was balance. Not peace, but balance. Different factions controlled different areas. We fought, yes, but within limits. Rules that everyone understood. What changed? New players, outside players, people who don't care about prison politics, people who want chaos. Elena picked up where Victor left off. Someone has been manipulating the gangs, feeding false information, creating conflicts where none should exist. For 3 years, we've been killing each other over lies. Daniel felt the pieces clicking together. Who? Victor turned from the window. We don't know. That's the problem. Every time we get close to answers, someone dies. Evidence disappears. Witnesses go silent. And you think I can help find them? Elena stood now, too. You hacked into one of the most secure defense contractors in the country. You exposed secrets that powerful people spent millions to hide. If anyone can trace the manipulation back to its source, it's you. Daniel's mind raced. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd come to this meeting prepared to refuse both offers and stake out his own path. Instead, he'd stumbled into something much larger. Why haven't you worked together on this before? Victor laughed bitterly. Because we hate each other. Because trust is weakness in this world. Because the manipulation has been working perfectly, keeping us at each other's throats while the real enemy watches from the shadows. But you're telling me now, both of you, together. Elena moved closer to Daniel. Because you showed us something in that recreation yard that we'd forgotten existed. Control without cruelty. Power without destruction. You made us remember that there might be another way. Daniel looked between them. Two of the most dangerous people in Blackrock, standing in a chapel asking for his help against an enemy neither could identify. I need access, he said finally, to your networks, your information, everything you know about the manipulation. Victor nodded slowly. This can be arranged. And I need something else. What? A truce between both of you. No more fighting while we investigate. No more deaths over territory disputes. If we're going to find whoever is behind this, we need to stop playing their game. Elena and Victor stared at each other. Years of hatred hung between them like a physical barrier. This is asking much, Victor said. It's asking everything, Elena corrected. Our people expect us to be enemies. If we suddenly stop fighting, then they'll ask questions, Daniel finished. Good. Let them ask. Let whoever is manipulating this prison wonder why their puppets stopped dancing. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Victor extended his hand toward Elena. Temporary truce until we find answers. Elena hesitated, then she took his hand. Temporary truce. Daniel felt something shift in the air, something that hadn't existed in Blackrock for 3 years. The possibility of change. We start tomorrow, he said. Meet me in the library at 10 a.m. Bring everything you have. He walked out of the chapel without looking back, leaving Victor and Elena standing together in a space where miracles were supposed to happen. The next morning at 10:07 a.m., Daniel sat in a corner of the prison library surrounded by files that shouldn't have existed. Victor had provided records of every violent incident involving his faction for the past 3 years. Elena had contributed intelligence reports gathered through her network of informants. Together, they formed a picture that made Daniel's blood run cold. The pattern was undeniable. Every major conflict between the Russian and Latino factions could be traced back to specific pieces of information that arrived at exactly the wrong time. A rumor here. A stolen item there. Witnesses who saw things that may not have happened. Someone was orchestrating violence with surgical precision. This is professional work, Daniel said, spreading papers across the library table. Not gang level. This is intelligence operation level. Victor nodded grimly. We suspected, but could never prove. Elena pointed to a series of dates on one document. Look at the timing. 3 days before each major incident, there's a transfer. New inmates arriving, always from the same facility. Daniel pulled the transfer records closer. His eyes widened. Greenfield Federal Detention Center, every single one. You know this place, Victor asked. I know of it. It's where they process federal witnesses and informants before relocating them. High security, completely off the books. Elena's face paled. You're saying the people starting these conflicts are federal informants? I'm saying they're coming from a facility that specializes in creating new identities for people who cooperate with the government. Whether they're informants or something else entirely, I don't know yet. Victor slammed his fist on the table. The government is manipulating prison gangs. For what purpose? Daniel was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Not the government. Someone inside the government. Someone with access to transfer systems and enough authority to move people where they need them. But why? Elena demanded. What do they gain from making us kill each other? The answer hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. He stood suddenly, knocking his chair backward. Warden Morrison? Victor frowned. What about her? She told me that BlackRock has the highest mortality rate in the federal system. She seemed troubled by it. But what if she's not troubled? What if she's the one benefiting? Elena shook her head. Morrison has been here for 3 years. The manipulation started 3 years ago. You think that's coincidence? I think we need to find out exactly what happens when an inmate dies at BlackRock. Where do the bodies go? Who handles the paperwork? What kind of federal funding does a high-mortality prison receive? Victor's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. Insurance fraud, death benefits, something financial. Or something else entirely. Something we're not seeing yet. Daniel gathered the documents. I need computer access, real access, not library terminals with filtered internet. Impossible, Victor said. Security protocols. I hacked the Department of Defense. You think I can't get around prison firewalls? Elena almost smiled. What do you need? Equipment, smuggled in from outside. Nothing fancy, just a basic laptop and a cellular connection. Can you make that happen? It will take 3 days. Make it 2. Victor stood and extended his hand to Daniel. You know that if you're wrong about Morrison, if she's innocent, and discovers what we're doing, we're all dead. Daniel shook his hand. I know. And if you're right, then we expose whatever she's hiding and we burn it to the ground. 2 days later, at 11:32 p.m., Daniel sat in his cell with a laptop that shouldn't have existed inside BlackRock Federal Penitentiary. Elena's network had delivered it hidden inside a food shipment disguised as kitchen equipment. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing security systems that would have stopped most hackers cold. Within an hour, he'd accessed the prison's administrative network. Within 2 hours, he'd found something that stopped his heart. BlackRock had a secondary accounting system, hidden from federal oversight, hidden from everyone except whoever had created it. Over the past 3 years, the prison had reported 847 inmate deaths. The official records showed standard mortality rates attributed to violence, illness, and suicide. But the secondary system told a different story. Only 312 of those deaths were real inmates. The remaining 535 were fabricated. Fake identities created to match fake deaths. And for each fake death, someone was collecting federal death benefits, insurance payments, and pension redistributions. Daniel calculated the total. His hand started shaking. $47 million. Stolen through fake inmate deaths over 3 years. And every single transaction traced back to one person. Not Warden Morrison. Her assistant, a man named Charles Webb, who handled all administrative paperwork for the facility. Daniel dug deeper into Webb's background. What he found made the financial fraud seem almost trivial. Charles Webb didn't exist before arriving at BlackRock 3 years ago. His social security number was fake. His employment history was fabricated. Everything about the man was a carefully constructed lie. But Daniel had spent years learning to find truths that powerful people wanted to hide. He followed digital breadcrumbs through layer after layer of deception until he found the real identity underneath. Webb's actual name was Michael Torres, former CIA operations officer, discharged 8 years ago under classified circumstances that Daniel couldn't penetrate even with his skills. A CIA operative was running a $47 million fraud scheme from inside a federal prison, and to cover his tracks, he was orchestrating violence between gangs, creating chaos that kept everyone looking in the wrong direction. Daniel closed the laptop and sat in darkness. This was bigger than prison politics. Bigger than gang territories. Bigger than anything he'd prepared for. He needed to tell Victor and Elena, but the moment he revealed what he'd found, everything would change. Webb would become a target, and CIA operatives didn't go down without a fight. At 6:15 a.m. the next morning, Daniel called an emergency meeting in the chapel. Victor and Elena arrived separately, both looking exhausted and concerned. What did you find? Elena asked immediately. Daniel told them everything. The fake deaths, the stolen millions, Webb's true identity, the CIA connection. When he finished, Victor sat in stunned silence. Elena looked like she might vomit. "A CIA operative?" Victor finally said. "In prison, running fraud scheme while making us kill each other for cover." "It makes sense," Elena said slowly. "Perfect cover. Who would look for intelligence operations inside a federal prison? Who would suspect that gang violence was manufactured by someone with government training?" Daniel nodded. "Webb controls the chaos. The chaos covers the fraud. The fraud funds whatever he's actually here to do." "What does that mean?" Victor demanded. "What is he actually here to do?" "I don't know yet. But $47 million doesn't disappear into someone's personal bank account. That money is going somewhere. Funding something. Something that requires complete invisibility and a steady income stream." Elena stood and began pacing. "We need to move against him, now, before he realizes we know." "We can't," Daniel said. "Not yet. If Webb has CIA training, he has contingency plans, probably multiple escape routes. Maybe dead man switches that would destroy all evidence if something happens to him. We need to know where the money is going before we make any move." Victor's pale eyes studied Daniel with new respect. "You think like intelligence officer yourself. I think like someone who's been hunted by powerful people before. Rushing in gets you killed. Patience gets you answers." "So what do we do?" Daniel had been thinking about this all night. "We need someone close to Webb, someone who can watch his movements without raising suspicion, someone he trusts." Elena's expression changed. "I might know someone. Webb has a relationship with one of my people. Nothing romantic, but he uses her to communicate with the Latino faction when he needs things done without official channels." "Can she be trusted?" "Her brother was killed in one of the manufactured incidents 2 years ago. If she learns that Webb orchestrated it, she'll want revenge more than any of us." Daniel nodded. "Approach her carefully. Don't reveal everything yet. Just ask her to pay attention. Report anything unusual. We need to build a complete picture before we act." Victor stood as well. "And what do we do in meantime? Sit and wait while murderer walks free among us." "We maintain the truce. We stop giving Webb the chaos he needs. If the violence drops suddenly, he'll have to adapt, change his patterns, maybe make a mistake. Or maybe he'll manufacture new crisis to get things back on track," Elena countered. "Then we'll be watching for it. Every move he makes from now on we see. Every decision he makes we analyze. We become the spider in his web waiting for him to stumble into our trap." The days that followed were the hardest of Daniel's life. He continued his normal routine, reading and exercising and maintaining the appearance of a neutral inmate who had chosen no sides. But underneath that calm exterior, his mind worked constantly on the Webb problem. Elena's contact, a woman named Rosa, proved invaluable. She reported that Webb had seemed increasingly agitated over the past week. The sudden drop in gang violence was clearly bothering him. He'd made 3 calls on a secure phone that he thought no one knew about. He'd had 2 secret meetings with people Rosa couldn't identify. Something was happening, something that Webb's careful plans hadn't accounted for. At 3:22 p.m. on Daniel's 12th day at Blackrock, everything changed. He was reading in his cell when guards appeared at his door. Not regular guards, federal marshals in tactical gear. "Daniel Chen, you need to come with us." "Why?" "Warden Morrison wants to see you, now." They escorted him through corridors he'd never seen before into a part of the prison that didn't appear on any official floor plans. Morrison waited in a conference room surrounded by people in suits who looked like they'd never smiled in their lives. "Sit down, Mr. Chen." Daniel sat. Morrison slid a photograph across the table. Charles Webb's face stared up at him and shut him. "We know what you've been doing," Morrison said. "We know about the laptop. We know about your investigation. We know about your meetings with Volkov and Reyes." Daniel's heart stopped. Everything he'd worked for was crumbling. "Before you panic," Morrison continued, "let me explain something. I've suspected Webb for 18 months, but I had no proof. No way to catch him without tipping him off. Then you arrived, a hacker who'd exposed government secrets, someone with skills I couldn't hire through official channels." Daniel stared at her. "You set me up. I gave you an opportunity. The choice to investigate was yours. The discoveries you made were real. You knew about the fake deaths. The stolen money." Morrison's expression hardened. "I knew something was wrong. I didn't know the extent until you found it. Webb is better than anyone I've ever seen at covering his tracks. But he wasn't prepared for someone like you." One of the suited men spoke up. "Mr. Chen, I'm Special Agent Harrison with the FBI's Counterintelligence Division." Webb isn't just a fraud operator. He's part of a network we've been tracking for 4 years. Former intelligence officers who've gone rogue, selling their skills to the highest bidder, funding their operations through schemes exactly like the one you uncovered. Daniel processed this information rapidly. You want me to help you take him down? We want you to finish what you started, with our support, with resources you couldn't access before. And in exchange, Morrison leaned forward. Reduced sentence. Transfer to a minimum security facility. Regular contact with Master Zhao for as long as he lives. A chance to actually make a difference instead of just serving time. Daniel thought about Victor and Elena. About the truce they'd built. About Rosa and her dead brother. About all the inmates who died in manufactured violence so that a rogue CIA officer could fund operations that probably threatened national security. What do you need me to do? Harrison opened a briefcase filled with equipment Daniel recognized immediately. High-end hacking tools, military-grade encryption breakers, things that didn't officially exist. Webb has a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night. Someone is coming to collect the latest payment. We need to know who. We need to trace where the money goes after it leaves this prison, and we need evidence that will hold up in federal court. Daniel looked at the equipment, then at Morrison, then at the photograph of Charles Webb. His sister had died because powerful people thought they could operate above the law. Now he had a chance to prove them wrong. I'll do it, he said, but I have conditions. Name them. Victor and Elena, they helped me get this far. Whatever happens, they get consideration. Reduced sentences. Better treatment. Something to show that cooperation actually means something in this system. Harrison nodded slowly. That can be arranged? And the inmates who died in Webb's manufactured violence. Their families deserve to know the truth. They deserve compensation. Morrison's expression softened slightly. We'll do everything we can. Daniel picked up one of the devices from the briefcase. It felt familiar in his hands, like coming home to a part of himself he'd thought he'd lost forever. Tell me everything you know about tomorrow's meeting, he said, and let's take this bastard down. The operation was set for 11 p.m. the following night. Daniel would infiltrate Webb's office plant surveillance equipment and hack into his secure communications. FBI teams would be positioned outside the prison, ready to follow whoever arrived for the payment collection. But as Daniel prepared for the most dangerous night of his life, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Webb had survived this long by being smarter than everyone around him. A man like that didn't leave loose ends. At 10:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the operation was scheduled to begin, Daniel's cell door opened. Charles Webb stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand and a smile on his face. Did you really think I didn't know? Webb asked softly. Did you really think a computer hacker with 3 weeks in prison could outmaneuver someone with 30 years in intelligence? Daniel stood slowly, his mind racing through options. How long have you known? Since your first conversation with Volkov. I have informants everywhere, Mr. Chen. Everywhere. Your truce, your investigation, your cute little meeting with the FBI. I've watched it all unfold like dinner theater. Then why wait until now to make a move? Webb's smile widened. Because I needed to know exactly who was working against me. Names, faces, connections. You've given me everything I need to clean house completely. The FBI knows about you. Even if you kill me, you're finished. The FBI knows what I wanted them to know. By tomorrow morning, every piece of evidence you gathered will point to Warden Morrison as the mastermind behind the fraud. I'll be the heroic whistleblower who uncovered her corruption. And you'll be another dead inmate in a prison with a tragically high mortality rate. Daniel calculated distances. Webb was 6 feet away. Too far to reach before a bullet could stop him. But maybe not too far for something else. You've thought of everything, Daniel said, shifting his weight slightly. I've had 30 years of practice. Except one thing. Webb's smile flickered. What's that? Daniel moved, not toward Webb, sideways. His hand caught the metal frame of his bunk and pulled. The entire bed swung outward like a door, creating a barrier between him and the gun. Webb fired. The bullet punched through the mattress but missed Daniel by inches. Daniel kept moving. He hit the floor, rolled, came up with his book in his hand. Not as a weapon, as a distraction. He threw it at Webb's face. Webb ducked. That single moment of broken eye contact was all Daniel needed. He closed the distance in 2 steps. His hand caught Webb's gun wrist, twisted. The weapon clattered to the floor. Webb countered with an elbow strike that Daniel barely dodged. This wasn't like fighting Hammer's crew. Webb had real training, real experience. He fought like someone who'd killed before and would kill again without hesitation. They exchanged blows in the tiny cell. Webb landed a punch that split Daniel's lip. Daniel responded with a palm strike to the chest that drove Webb backward. "You're good," Webb admitted, breathing hard. "Better than I expected." "My teacher was better." Well, Daniel pressed his advantage. Wing Chun combinations that Master Zhao had drilled into him for 13 years. Webb blocked most of them, but not all. A strike slipped through, hitting the pressure point beneath his collarbone. Webb's right arm went dead. Panic flashed across his face. "What did you do?" "Showed you what real training looks like." Daniel moved in for the finishing blow, but Webb wasn't finished. His left hand produced a knife from somewhere, slashing in an arc that opened a cut across Daniel's chest. Pain exploded through Daniel's body. He stumbled backward. Webb grinned through bloody teeth. Never underestimate a cornered animal. He lunged with the knife. Daniel sidestepped, caught the arm, and used Webb's momentum against him. The former CIA officer flew over Daniel's hip and crashed into the concrete floor. Before he could recover, Daniel dropped onto him, knee pressing into his spine, hands controlling his arms. "It's over," Daniel said. "Nothing is over," Webb snarled. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, what's really happening in this prison, what's coming." "Then tell me." Webb laughed. Bitter. Broken. "Why would I tell you anything? Because if you don't, I'll use every technique my teacher showed me to make you talk. And trust me, some of them make waterboarding look like a spa treatment." Webb's body went still. Then he laughed again. Different this time. Almost impressed. "You know what I believe you. Master Zhao trained you well." "How do you know about Master Zhao?" Webb twisted his head to look up at Daniel. His smile was terrible. "Because I'm the one who gave him cancer." The words hit Daniel like a sledgehammer to the chest. His grip on Webb's arms loosened for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Webb twisted free and scrambled to his feet, putting distance between them. "You're lying," Daniel said, his voice barely a whisper. Webb wiped blood from his mouth with his good hand. His dead arm hung uselessly at his side, but his smile remained intact. Think about it, Daniel. Your teacher was the picture of health. Practiced martial arts every day of his life. Never smoked. Never drank. And suddenly at 63, aggressive liver cancer. The kind that spreads so fast there's nothing anyone can do. Daniel's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage so intense it threatened to consume everything he'd learned about control. Why would you hurt him? He has nothing to do with any of this." Webb laughed. "He has everything to do with this. William Zhao was one of the most effective intelligence assets the CIA ever had in Hong Kong. Before he escaped that labor camp. Before he opened his little academy. Before he started teaching kung fu to suburban kids." Daniel felt the floor shifting beneath his feet. "You're lying." "I'm telling you the truth for the first time since you arrived in this prison. Master Zhao worked for American intelligence for 15 years. He turned dozens of Chinese officials, stole secrets that shaped the Cold War. Then he got caught, spent 3 years in that labor camp, and somehow escaped to start a new life. He never told me any of this." "Of course he didn't. The things he did for us haunted him. Teaching martial arts was his penance, his way of trying to balance the scales." Webb's smile turned cruel. "But some of us never forgave him for walking away. Some of us remembered the assets he burned when he disappeared. The operations that failed because he wasn't there to run them." Daniel forced himself to breathe, to think, to find the center that Master Zhao had taught him to access even in moments of extreme stress. "So you poisoned him, as revenge for something that happened decades ago." Revenge is such an ugly word. I prefer correction. Zhao thought he could escape his past, hide behind a peaceful facade, pretend that the blood on his hands had been washed clean by teaching breathing exercises to children. Webb picked up his knife from where it had fallen. His right arm was still dead, but his left hand gripped the blade with practiced ease. "I was patient. I waited. And when I learned that his star pupil had hacked into defense contractor records, I saw the perfect opportunity. Get you into this prison, use your skills for my purposes, and eventually let you discover the truth about the man who shaped your entire life. You wanted me to find out. I wanted you to suffer, the way Zhao made others suffer, the way I suffered when his disappearance cost me everything I'd worked for." Daniel heard footsteps in the corridor, guards responding to the gunshot, FBI agents moving into position, but none of that mattered now. All that mattered was the man standing in front of him. "Master Zhao isn't a murderer," Daniel said. "He isn't what you're describing." Master Zhao killed 17 people during his time with the agency, most of them with his bare hands. Those techniques he taught you, he developed some of them specifically for assassination. Did he tell you that? Did he explain that the pressure points he showed you can stop a heart as easily as they can paralyze a limb? Daniel thought about his training. The advanced techniques that Master Zhao had been preparing him for before his arrest. The hints about deeper knowledge that went beyond self-defense. Had there been warnings hidden in those lessons, truths that his teacher had been afraid to speak directly? Even if what you're saying is true, it doesn't justify what you've done. The fake deaths, the stolen money, the inmates who died in your manufactured violence. You still don't understand. Webb shook his head. The money isn't for personal gain. It funds operations that the official intelligence community can't touch. Off-the-books work that keeps this country safe while people like you sleep peacefully in your beds. Safe? You've murdered innocent people. I've made hard choices, choices that weak men refuse to make. Zhao understood that once, before he lost his nerve and ran away to teach Tai Chi. The door burst open. FBI agents flooded the cell, weapons drawn. Webb dropped his knife and raised his hands, that terrible smile still on his face. You got what you wanted, Daniel. I'm caught. The operation is over, but the truth is out now, too. Think about that when you're holding Master Zhao's hand while he dies from the cancer I gave him. Think about the man you called teacher and the secrets he kept from you for 13 years. They dragged Webb away. Daniel stood alone in his cell, blood dripping from the wound across his chest, his entire understanding of the world crumbling around him. Special Agent Harrison appeared at the door. Chen, we need medical attention for that cut, and we need to debrief you about everything that just happened. Daniel didn't move. Is it true what he said about Master Zhao? Harrison hesitated. I don't know the specifics of Zhao's history, but I can tell you that Webb is a master manipulator. Whatever truth he told you, he told it in the way designed to cause maximum damage. That's not an answer. No, it's not. Harrison stepped closer. What I can tell you is that the man who raised you, trained you, shaped you into who you are, deserves the chance to tell his own story. Don't let Webb's version be the only one you hear. Daniel finally looked up. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was set. I need to make a phone call. At 2:47 a.m., Daniel sat in the same private room where he'd spoken to Master Zhao days earlier. The phone felt impossibly heavy in his hand. He dialed the number 3 times and hung up before it could connect. On the 4th attempt, he let it ring. Master Zhao's voice came through weak but alert, as if he'd been waiting for this call. Daniel, I heard there was an incident. Webb told me things about your past, about who you really are. Silence stretched across the line. When Master Zhao finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades. I wondered when this day would come. I prayed it never would. But secrets have a way of finding light eventually. Daniel closed his eyes. So it's true. You worked for the CIA. You killed people. I worked for American intelligence for 15 years. I did things that I have spent the rest of my life trying to atone for. And yes, people died by my hand. Many people. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to see me as I wished I had been, not as I was. Because the man who taught you meditation and breathing exercises was trying to become someone different from the man who stopped hearts for money and patriotism. Daniel felt tears streaming down his face. Were you ever going to tell me? I was going to tell you everything. When your training was complete, when you were ready to understand that the techniques I taught you were born in blood and refined through violence. But then you were arrested, and I thought perhaps fate had decided you should never know. Webb said he poisoned you, that your cancer wasn't natural. Master Zhao's laugh was soft and sad. I always suspected. The timing was too convenient, the progression too aggressive. But knowing how I was going to die didn't change that I was dying. It only clarified what I needed to do with the time I had left. You should have told me. I could have helped. I could have done something. You are doing something, right now. You're becoming the man I always saw in you. The man who uses his skills for justice, not revenge. The man who builds bridges instead of burning them. Get it? Daniel gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles went white. I don't know how to process this. Everything I thought I knew about you. The man who trained you was real Daniel. Every lesson, every exercise, every conversation we shared was genuine. The fact that I was someone else before we met doesn't erase what we built together. How can I trust anything now? How do I know what's real? Master Zhao's voice hardened slightly, the voice of the man he'd been before the academy. You know what's real because you feel it. The center I taught you to find, the calm that exists beyond fear and anger, that doesn't come from lies. That comes from truth. from discipline, from love. Love? I never had children of my own. My work made that impossible. But you, Daniel, you were the son I never thought I deserved. Teaching you wasn't penance. It was the greatest joy of my life. Daniel broke down completely. 13 years of training and nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could have prepared him for this. I don't know what to do, he sobbed. I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. You're supposed to be exactly who you've been becoming all along. A good man, a skilled man, a man who chooses peace when violence would be easier. That's your legacy, Daniel, not mine. Yours. Webb said the techniques you taught me were designed for assassination. Some of them were. In the wrong hands, the knowledge I gave you could destroy, but I didn't put it in the wrong hands. I put it in yours. And you've already shown in that recreation yard that you understand the true purpose of everything I taught you. Daniel wiped his face. His breathing slowly steadied. What do I do now? You finish what you started. You expose the network Webb was part of. You honor the inmates who died in his manufactured violence. And when the time comes, you find a way to forgive. Forgive who, Webb? Forgive everyone, including me, including yourself. Master Zhao's voice grew weaker. I don't have much time left. The doctors say weeks, not months. Before I go, I need to know that you'll be all right, that you'll find your way through this darkness. I will, I promise. Then I can rest, knowing that my student has become everything I hoped he would be, knowing that my legacy will continue through someone worthy of carrying it. The line went silent, not because Master Zhao had hung up, because there was nothing left to say. Daniel sat in the quiet room until dawn light crept through the small window. Then he composed himself and walked out to finish what he'd started. By 8:15 a.m. the next morning, the FBI had Webb in federal custody at a secure location outside the prison. The evidence Daniel had gathered combined with Webb's confession during their fight was enough to begin unraveling the entire network. But Daniel wasn't satisfied. Webb was one person. The operation he'd described involved multiple former intelligence officers, multiple funding streams, multiple prisons where similar schemes might be operating. He sat with Special Agent Harrison in Warden Morrison's office outlining everything he'd learned. Webb mentioned others, Daniel said. A network of former CIA and NSA officers who went rogue. The money from BlackRock was feeding into something larger. Harrison nodded. We've suspected this network existed for years. Webb is the first concrete lead we've had, but he's not talking. Whatever training he received, it included resistance to interrogation. Let me try. Morrison and Harrison exchanged glances. That's not how this works, Mr. Chen. We have protocols, procedures. Your protocols haven't gotten results in 4 years. I got results in 3 weeks. Daniel leaned forward. Webb wanted to hurt me by revealing the truth about Master Zhao. But he made a mistake. He assumed that pain would break me. Instead, it clarified everything. Clarified how Master Zhao spent 40 years trying to become something different from what his past made him. Webb spent those same years embracing his worst impulses. They started in the same world, but they ended up in completely different places. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Webb thinks he knows me because he knows Master Zhao's history. He's wrong. I'm not my teacher. I'm not defined by his past or his choices. I'm defined by my own. Morrison spoke for the first time. What exactly are you proposing? Webb poisoned the man who was like a father to me. He orchestrated violence that killed innocent people to cover his fraud. He thinks I'm motivated by revenge now, that I'm broken and predictable. Aren't you? Daniel turned to face them. His expression was calm, completely calm. Revenge is weakness. Master Zhao taught me that in my first year of training. What I want isn't revenge. What I want is to finish the mission. Expose the network. Prevent other prisons from becoming tools for rogue intelligence operations. Harrison studied him carefully. And you think you can get Webb to give up information that our trained interrogators can't extract? I don't think I can get him to give up anything. I think I can get him to show me where to look. Webb is arrogant. He believes he's smarter than everyone around him. That arrogance is his weakness. How do you exploit that? Daniel smiled slightly. It was not a pleasant smile. By making him think he's winning while he's actually losing. By letting him believe he's manipulating me while I'm reading every word he says. By using the skills that Master Zhao taught me in ways that Webb never anticipated. Morrison made the call at 9:30 a.m. 45 minutes later, Daniel was escorted to a secure interrogation room in the federal wing of the prison. Webb sat behind a metal table, hands cuffed orange jumpsuit replacing his administrative clothes. He grinned when Daniel entered. Couldn't stay away, could you? Still processing Daddy's little secrets? Daniel took the seat across from him. His face revealed nothing. I'm here to offer you a deal. Webb's grin widened. A deal from the computer hacker who ruined my operation. What could you possibly offer me? Information about Master Zhao that you don't have. Details about his time with the agency that were never documented. Techniques that he taught me that no one else knows. Webb's expression shifted, interest flickering behind the mockery. Why would you share that with me? Because you were right about everything. Master Zhao lied to me for 13 years. He turned me into a weapon without telling me what I really was, and when I found out the truth, something broke inside me. Daniel leaned forward, his voice dropping. You think I'm here to get justice for the people you killed? I couldn't care less about them. What I want is what Master Zhao promised me and never delivered. The complete training, the advanced techniques, the knowledge that was supposed to be my inheritance. Webb studied him carefully. His training included reading people, detecting lies, identifying manipulation. But Daniel wasn't lying. Everything he said was technically true. He just wasn't saying all of it. What exactly are you asking for? You know things about the agency's martial arts programs that Master Zhao never shared with me. Techniques that were developed based on his work. Methods that went beyond what any civilian academy teaches. And in exchange, I give you what you originally wanted. My hacking skills. My access to systems you can't reach from in here. A way to continue your work even from behind bars. Webb laughed. You expect me to believe that you'd betray everything you stand for just to learn a few pressure points. Daniel held his gaze without blinking. Master Zhao betrayed everything he claimed to stand for every day of his life. Why should I be any different? The silence that followed this bit lasted nearly a minute. Webb was calculating, assessing, trying to find the trap. Let's say I believe you, he finally said. Let's say I'm willing to share knowledge that the agency classified decades ago. What guarantee do I have that you won't just take what you want and run? No guarantee, just like you have no guarantee that I won't find the information anyway once I know where to look. But working together saves us both time, and time is something Master Zhao doesn't have much of. Webb's eyes narrowed. You want to use what I teach you on Zhao before he dies. Daniel let his mask slip slightly, just enough to show the rage burning underneath. He made me into something without my consent. He shaped my entire life based on lies. When I see him next, I want him to know exactly what he created. I want him to feel every technique he should have taught me himself. Webb smiled, genuinely pleased. Now that's interesting. That's very interesting indeed. He leaned back in his chair. All right, Daniel, I'll play along. But first, a test. Prove that you're willing to cross lines. Prove that the good student Master Zhao thought he created is actually gone. What kind of test? There's a guard named Martinez. He's one of the few people in this prison who knows the truth about what I was doing. He's planning to testify against me when the trial happens. Daniel felt ice in his stomach. You want me to kill him? Nothing so crude. I want you to discredit him, access the FBI's files on his testimony, plant evidence that he was involved in the fraud, make it look like he's trying to save himself by blaming me. That would ruin an innocent man's life. Webb's smile sharpened. Exactly. That's the point. You want to walk the path I walked. It starts with destroying innocence. It starts with choosing results over morality. Daniel sat perfectly still. His heart was pounding, but his face remained carved from stone. When do you need this done? By tomorrow night. Do that, and I'll tell you everything. Not just about Master Zhao's techniques, about the network, about the operations we're funding, about things that would make your little hacking adventure look like a high school science project. Daniel stood. I'll need access to the FBI's internal systems. Use what they gave you for the investigation. I'm sure you can find creative ways to expand your access. This stays between us. No one else knows. Webb nodded. Of course. Welcome to the real world, Daniel Chen. The one where good men do terrible things for greater purposes. Daniel walked out without another word. His hands were shaking, but not from the reason Webb assumed. At 11:22 a.m., Daniel sat in Warden Morrison's office with Special Agent Harrison and 2 other FBI agents he hadn't met before. He took the bait, Daniel said. He wants me to frame Martinez as a test of loyalty. Harrison exhaled slowly. That's a serious request. He's asking you to commit federal crimes. He's also promising to reveal everything about the network if I do it. Names, locations, operations, funding sources. You can't actually frame an innocent man, Chen. That's not negotiable. Daniel smiled. I don't need to frame anyone. I just need Webb to think I did. He outlined his plan. Create false evidence that would appear in FBI systems but actually be quarantined in a sandboxed environment. Let Webb see the results through carefully controlled channels. Make him believe the corruption was real while never actually harming Martinez. It's risky, one of the other agents said. If Webb has any way of verifying independently, he doesn't. His network inside the prison has been dismantled. His outside contacts are being monitored. Right now, his only window into the world is what we show him. Morrison leaned forward. And you think this will make him reveal the network? I think Webb's arrogance is his fatal flaw. He wants to believe he can turn Master Zhao's prize student into something corrupt. He wants to prove that his way of seeing the world is correct. That will make him careless. Harrison considered it for a long moment. All right, we'll set up the sandbox, create fake evidence that looks real but goes nowhere. But if anything goes wrong, I take the blame. Webb thinks he's manipulating me. In reality, I'm just giving him enough rope to hang himself. The next 20 hours were the most intense of Daniel's life. He worked with FBI technicians to create convincing false evidence. He planted documents that would appear in searches but actually exist only in isolated systems. He built an elaborate illusion designed to satisfy Webb's paranoia while protecting the innocent guard caught in the middle. At 10:15 p.m., Daniel returned to Webb's interrogation room with a tablet showing the results of his work. Martinez's testimony has been compromised, Daniel said, sliding the tablet across the table. Evidence of his involvement in the fraud is now in 3 separate FBI databases. By tomorrow morning, he'll be the one facing charges instead of you. Webb examined the screen carefully. His eyes moved across documents, transaction records, internal memos that painted Martinez as the mastermind behind everything. This is impressive work, very thorough. I told you I was motivated. Webb set down the tablet and looked at Daniel with something approaching respect. You've crossed a line tonight that you can never uncross. Whatever you believed about yourself, whatever Master Zhao told you about being a good man, that's gone now. You're one of us. Then start talking. The network, the operations, everything you promised. Webb smiled and began to speak. Over the next 2 hours, he revealed the scope of an operation that Daniel hadn't imagined possible. 12 former intelligence officers, 7 prisons across the country running similar fraud schemes. Over $300 million funneled into operations ranging from political manipulation to targeted assassinations. Daniel listened, memorized, asked questions that prompted even more revelations. Webb, believing he'd turned his enemy into an ally, held nothing back. At 12:47 a.m., when Webb had exhausted his knowledge, Daniel stood. One more thing, he said. What the antidote? For whatever poison you used on Master Zhao. Does it exist? Webb's smile returned. You think I'd tell you that even now some suffering is earned, Daniel. Your teacher earned his. Daniel nodded slowly. I thought you'd say that. He walked to the door and knocked. It opened to reveal Special Agent Harrison and a team of FBI agents. We got everything, Harrison said. Webb's face went white. What? Daniel turned back to face him. The evidence against Martinez was fake, sandboxed in isolated systems that were never connected to anything real. You just confessed to coordinating a $300 million criminal enterprise involving 12 operatives across 7 federal facilities. You tricked me. I used your arrogance against you, just like you tried to use my grief against me. Webb lunged at Daniel, but agents restrained him right before he could take 2 steps. You think this is over, Webb screamed. You think exposing the network ends anything. There are people above me, people you can't touch, people who will find you and everyone you care about. Daniel stepped close to Webb's face. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Master Zhao taught me that the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle. But he also taught me what to do when battle becomes necessary. He pressed his thumb against a pressure point on Webb's neck, just for a second, just enough to cause a flash of pain that made Webb gasp. I'm choosing not to break you, Daniel said. Not because I can't, because I'm better than what you tried to make me, and that's something you'll never understand. He stepped back and nodded to the agents. Get him out of my sight. They dragged Webb away, his screams echoing through the corridor until a door slammed shut and silence returned. Harrison put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. That was one of the most impressive interrogations I've ever witnessed, and I've been doing this for 20 years. Daniel didn't respond. His mind was already elsewhere. I need to make a phone call, he said finally. At 1:33 a.m. he heard Master Zhao's voice one last time. I watched, the old man whispered. Morrison arranged for me to see everything. The interrogation, your performance, your choice. I didn't do it for you. I know, you did it because it was right. That's what makes you better than I ever was. Daniel felt tears threatening again. Webb said there's no antidote for the poison. I know, I accepted that possibility years ago. It's not fair. None of this is fair. Life rarely is my student, but fairness isn't what matters. What matters is what we choose to do with the time we're given. Master Zhao's voice grew weaker. The connection was fading, but not because of the phone line. I'm proud of you, Daniel, more proud than I've ever been of anything in my life. Remember that. When I'm gone, remember that you made an old man's final years meaningful. Master? It's time for me to rest, and time for you to begin the next chapter of your journey, without me, without the past weighing you down, just you and the future you'll create. The line went silent. Daniel sat in the dark room until dawn broke. Then he stood, dried his tears, and walked out to face whatever came next. 3 weeks passed after Webb's confession. The FBI moved systematically through the network he'd revealed, arresting operatives in 7 states, freezing accounts, dismantling operations that had corrupted the federal prison system for nearly a decade. Daniel followed the news from his cell, watching dominoes fall that he'd helped push. But his thoughts weren't on the investigation anymore. They were on the phone call that came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Master Zhao was gone. The old man had passed peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by the few remaining students from his academy who had gathered were his hit when they learned how little time remained. His final words, according to the hospice nurse, had been spoken in Mandarin. A prayer, a blessing, and a name. Daniel. Warden Morrison delivered the news personally. She found Daniel in the library staring at a book he wasn't reading. I'm sorry, Haniambi, she said. I know what he meant to you. Daniel didn't look up. When is the funeral? 3 days from now, San Francisco. I've arranged for you to attend under guard escort. His head snapped up. You can do that. Given everything you've done for this investigation, I can do a lot of things. The question is whether you want to go. Daniel thought about Webb's revelations, about the man Master Zhao had been before the academy, about the 17 people who had died by his hands and the secrets he'd kept for 13 years. Yes, Daniel said finally. I need to say goodbye. I need to understand who he really was. The journey to San Francisco took 8 hours in a federal transport van. 2 marshals sat with Daniel, their weapons holstered but visible. They'd been briefed on his capabilities and maintained professional distance throughout the trip. Daniel spent the hours in silence watching America scroll past through reinforced windows. He'd grown up in this country, trained in this country, gone to prison in this country, and now he was returning to bury the man who had shaped everything he'd become. The funeral was held at a small Buddhist temple in Chinatown, 3 blocks from where Master Zhao's academy had stood for 40 years. Daniel arrived in handcuffs, flanked by marshals who attracted stares from the mourners gathered outside. Elena Reyes was waiting at the entrance. Daniel hadn't expected to see her there. What are you doing here? He asked. My grandmother and Master Zhao trained together in Hong Kong, before either of them came to America, before everything that happened after. She fell into step beside him as they entered the temple. When I heard he'd passed, I wanted to pay my respects. The FBI let you leave the prison, Elena smiled slightly. The truce you brokered changed a lot of things. Morrison saw value in demonstrating that cooperation has rewards. Viktor Volkov appeared from behind a pillar. His presence was even more surprising than Elena's. Close your mouth, Daniel, you look like fish. Victor, what the hell? Zhao and I had history, not direct history, but connections that go back decades. Intelligence community is smaller than you think. We all know each other one way or another. Daniel stared at both of them. 2 of the most dangerous criminals in Black Rock Federal Penitentiary standing in a Buddhist temple paying respects to a martial arts master who had once been a CIA assassin. His life had become something he couldn't have imagined 3 months ago. The ceremony was traditional. Incense burning, monks chanting, offerings placed before Master Zhao's photograph, which showed him as Daniel remembered him best. Vibrant, focused, alive with the energy that had drawn an angry 9-year-old into his orbit and transformed him over 13 years. When the time came for eulogies, Daniel was asked to speak. He approached the altar with shackled hands and a heart full of conflicting emotions. I came here today not knowing what I would say, Daniel began. 3 weeks ago, I learned things about Master Zhao that challenged everything I thought I knew about him, about myself, about the nature of redemption. The gathered mourners listened in silence. Most were former students. Some were community members who had known Zhao for decades. A few were strangers whose presence Daniel couldn't explain. Master Zhao was not a perfect man. He did things in his past that caused tremendous suffering. He carried guilt that most people couldn't imagine, and he spent 40 years trying to become someone different, someone worthy of the students who trusted him. Daniel paused, gathering himself. I don't know if he succeeded. I don't know if redemption is even possible for the things he did. But I know this: the man who taught me was real. The lessons were real. The love was real. His voice cracked on the last word. He told me once that the river doesn't fight the mountain. It simply becomes stronger than pine, than stone. I didn't understand what he meant until I watched him face death with the same calm he brought to everything else. He didn't fight his fate, he accepted it, and in accepting it, he found peace. Daniel looked at the photograph, at the eyes that had seen through him since childhood. I forgive you, Master, for the secrets, for the lies, for the things you couldn't tell me, and I promise that your legacy will continue, not the legacy of violence, the legacy of transformation, the legacy of choosing to become something better than what our past made us. He bowed to the altar and returned to his seat. The marshals shifted uncomfortably, unused to emotional displays from federal prisoners. After the ceremony, Daniel was granted 30 minutes to visit the academy. It stood exactly as he remembered it. The same red door. The same faded sign with Chinese characters. The same worn wooden floors where he'd spent thousands of hours learning to move, to breathe, to find the center that existed beyond fear and anger. A woman met him at the entrance. She was in her 60s with gray hair pulled back severely and eyes that sparkled with recognition. You're Daniel Chen, William's star pupil. I am, and you are, Lin Mei. I managed the Academy's affairs for the past 20 years. William asked me to give you something when this day came. She led him to Master Zhao's private quarters at the back of the building. The marshals followed, but kept their distance, sensing the sacred nature of what was unfolding. Lin Mei opened a cabinet that Daniel had never been allowed to touch during his training years. Inside were items he didn't recognize: photographs, documents, objects whose significance he couldn't immediately grasp, and a letter, addressed to him in Master Zhao's elegant handwriting. He wrote this 6 months ago, Lin Mei said, when he first learned about the cancer, before Webb, before any of it. Daniel took the letter with trembling hands. The paper was worn as if Zhao had held it many times before sealing the envelope. Should I read it now? That's your choice. But William wanted you to have privacy. Whatever's in that letter, it's between you and him. Daniel looked at the marshals. They exchanged glances and stepped outside, giving him the space he needed. He opened the envelope. My dearest student, if you are reading this, then I have passed beyond the veil that separates this life from whatever comes next. I have tried many times to write this letter, and each time the words have failed me. But I must try one final time because there are things you deserve to know. The man you called Master was not always worthy of that title. Before the Academy, before San Francisco, before everything you know about my life, I was someone else entirely. Someone who caused tremendous suffering. In service of causes I believed were righteous. I killed 17 people during my time with American intelligence. Some were enemies of this country. Some were simply obstacles to operations that powerful men considered necessary. I told myself that the greater good justified these actions. I was wrong. The labor camp in China should have broken me. 3 years of torture and deprivation designed to extract confessions for crimes I had actually committed. Instead, it clarified everything. I realized that the violence I had perpetrated was never justified, that no cause is worth the destruction of human souls. When I escaped and came to America, I swore that I would never kill again, that I would use the skills I had developed for destruction to teach others a different path. The Academy was my penance, my attempt to balance scales that could never truly be balanced. And then you arrive. I saw something in you, Daniel, from that very first day, an anger that matched my own at your age, a potential for violence that could have consumed you entirely, but also a capacity for growth that took my breath away. Teaching you was not about creating another weapon. It was about proving to myself that transformation was possible, that someone carrying the same fire I had carried could choose a different path. You have proven that truth again and again, in the recreation yard when you could have destroyed and chose to demonstrate instead, in your investigation when you could have sought revenge and chose justice instead, in your heart where you could have let bitterness take root and instead cultivated compassion. I am not asking you to forgive me for my past. Some things cannot be forgiven. I am asking you to understand that the man who trained you was trying every day to become someone worthy of your trust. Whether I succeeded, only you can judge. There is one final thing I must tell you. The techniques I was preparing to teach you before your arrest were not merely advanced martial arts. They were the complete system of internal cultivation that I developed during my time with the agency. Knowledge that can heal as easily as it can harm. Power that comes from understanding the connection between body, mind, and spirit. I have left instructions with Lin Mei for the continuation of your training. Not everything can be learned from written words, but enough has been documented that a dedicated student can find the way. You are ready for this knowledge now. Not because you have suffered, because you have grown. Because you understand that true strength is not about dominance, it is about the choice to protect rather than destroy. I love you, Daniel, as the son I never had, as the proof that my life had meaning beyond the suffering I caused, as the future that I will never see but trust completely. Live well. Fight only when necessary, and remember that the river that does not fight the mountain eventually becomes the ocean. Your teacher William Zhao Daniel read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, placed it against his heart, and wept. Lin Mei found him an hour later still sitting in Master Zhao's quarters, surrounded by decades of accumulated wisdom. Are you all right? No, Daniel said honestly, but I will be. She handed him a thick binder filled with handwritten pages. The training instructions. Everything William wanted you to have. Daniel took the binder. It was heavy in his hands. Heavy with possibility. Thank you. There's one more thing. Lin Mei hesitated. William had a request. Something he hoped you would consider when the time was right. What request? The academy is yours now. In his will, he left everything to you. The building, the name, the responsibility of continuing what he started. Daniel stared at her. I'm in prison. I have 2 more years on my sentence. I know, but William believed that when you're released, you'll need a purpose. Something to build, something to protect. She placed a key in his hand. The key to the academy's front door. Think about it. There's no rush. The building will be maintained until you're ready. But know that your teacher's final wish was for you to carry his work forward, to transform his legacy of violence into something that heals. The journey back to Black Rock took another 8 hours. Daniel spent them studying the binder Lin Mei had given him, page after page of techniques he'd never seen, concepts that went beyond anything Master Zhao had shown him during their years together, and mixed throughout personal notes, observations about Daniel's progress, predictions about his future, love expressed in the precise language of martial instruction. By the time the transport van pulled into the prison, Daniel had begun to understand what Master Zhao had been preparing him for. Not just physical mastery, something deeper, something that connected the violence of the past to the possibility of redemption. Victor and Elena returned to Black Rock separately, but the truce they'd established held firm. In the weeks following the funeral, something remarkable began to happen within the prison walls. The violence statistics dropped by 43%. Gangs that had warred for years began negotiating territories through conversation rather than bloodshed. Inmates who had lived in constant fear started moving through the facility with something approaching normalcy. And at the center of it all, Daniel Chen taught. It started small, a few inmates asking about the techniques they'd witnessed in the recreation yard. Questions about breathing, about center, about the calm that Daniel maintained even in moments of extreme stress. He began holding informal sessions in the chapel during free time. 5 people became 10. 10 became 30. Inmates from different factions sitting together, learning to find the stillness that existed beyond their anger and fear. Hammer was among the first to attend. The man who had terrorized D Block for 4 years sat in the back row watching Daniel demonstrate basic breathing techniques. His crew was scattered. His reputation was destroyed. He had nothing left except the choice of what to become next. After the 3rd session, Hammer approached Daniel privately. Why are you doing this? He asked. After what I tried to do to you. Daniel considered the question carefully. Because my teacher showed me that transformation is possible, for anyone, including you. You think I can change? I think you've already started. The man who attacked me in the recreation yard wouldn't be standing here asking these questions. Hammer's eyes were wet. Something Daniel hadn't thought possible from the hardened gang leader. I've done terrible things, things that can't be undone. So did my teacher, worse things than you can imagine, but he spent 40 years trying to become someone different, and in the end, he succeeded. How do you know he succeeded? Daniel touched the letter in his pocket. Because he taught me, and I'm standing here teaching you. That's his legacy. That's the proof that redemption is real. 6 months later, Daniel Chen walked out of Black Rock Federal Penitentiary as a free man. His sentence had been reduced to time served in recognition of his cooperation with the Webb investigation. The network he'd helped expose had resulted in 47 arrests. It's the recovery of over $200 million in stolen funds and reforms to prison administrative oversight across the federal system. Warden Morrison met him at the gate. "What are you going to do now, Lin?" she asked. Daniel looked at the sky, blue and endless and free. "I'm going to San Francisco. There's an academy there that needs a teacher." "You're going to continue his work." "I'm going to transform it. Master Zhao taught me that violence and peace are two sides of the same coin. The techniques he developed can destroy, but they can also heal. I want to explore that second path." Morrison nodded slowly. "If you ever want to come back here, I could use your help. The program you started has reduced violence more effectively than anything we've tried in 20 years. Maybe someday, but first I need to learn who I am outside these walls. I've been defined by this place for too long." He shook her hand and walked toward the waiting car. Special Agent Harrison leaned against the hood, a folder in his hand. "Before you go," Harrison said, "I wanted you to know that we traced the poison web used on Master Zhao. It was a modified compound originally developed by the CIA for targeted assassinations." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we found the antidote, or rather, what's left of it. Webb kept a supply hidden probably as insurance. There wasn't enough to save your teacher, but our scientists have analyzed the formula." Harrison handed him the folder. Inside were research documents, chemical analyses, medical reports. "We're developing a treatment based on what we found. It won't bring back Master Zhao, but it might save others who've been poisoned by similar compounds. I thought you'd want to know that his death led to something positive." Daniel held the folder against his chest. Another piece of his teacher's legacy. Another transformation of violence into healing. "Thank you." "Thank you, Daniel. What you did in there took courage that most people don't have. The world needs more people like you." The drive to San Francisco took 6 hours. Daniel spent them reading Master Zhao's training binder, practicing breathing techniques, and thinking about the future he was driving toward. When he arrived at the academy, Lin Mei was waiting. "Welcome home," she said. Daniel looked at the red door, the faded sign, the building that had shaped his entire life. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted. Neither did William when he first opened these doors. He learned as he went. So will you. She handed him a list of names. Former students who had reached out after the funeral. People who wanted to resume their training. People who had heard about what happened at Black Rock and wanted to learn from the man who had transformed a prison. The list was 3 pages long. "When do I start?" Daniel asked. "Whenever you're ready. The building is yours, the name is yours, the legacy is yours." Daniel walked through the red door. The wooden floors creaked under his feet exactly as he remembered. The training hall stood empty, but waiting, filled with the ghosts of 10,000 practice sessions. He moved to the center of the room and assumed the opening stance of the first form Master Zhao had ever taught him. His body remembered everything, every movement, every breath, every principle that had been drilled into him over 13 years. But as he began the form, something was different. The movements flowed more smoothly than they ever had before. The breathing came from deeper within his center. The power that traveled through his limbs carried something new, something that hadn't been there before his time at Black Rock. He understood now what Master Zhao had been preparing him for. The advanced techniques weren't about destruction, they were about integration, about connecting the physical and the spiritual, about finding the place where violence and peace became the same thing. When he finished the form, Lin Mei stood watching from the doorway. "William would have been proud," she said. "You found what he spent 40 years searching for." "What's that?" "The center, not just in your body, in your soul." Daniel smiled. For the first time in months, the expression came easily. 3 months later, the Chen Academy opened its doors for the first time. Daniel had changed the name deliberately, not to erase Master Zhao's legacy, but to acknowledge that the legacy was evolving, becoming something new. 27 students attended the first class. Some were former inmates from Black Rock, released into a world they no longer recognize and seeking purpose. Some were young people from the neighborhood drawn by stories of a teacher who had learned in prison and emerged transformed. Some were victims of violence who wanted to reclaim their bodies and their confidence. Victor Volkov sent a message from Black Rock. He was being considered for early release based on his cooperation with the ongoing investigation and his role in maintaining the peace Daniel had helped establish. Elena Reyes sent flowers. She had another 18 months on her sentence, but she was using that time to study the materials Daniel had left behind, continuing the work of transformation that had begun in a prison chapel. Hammer, now going by his birth name Marcus, became Daniel's first teaching assistant. The former gang leader had found in martial arts what he'd been seeking through violence his entire life. A sense of power that didn't require destroying others, an identity that wasn't defined by fear. And every morning before the students arrived, Daniel performed the complete form that Master Zhao had documented in his final binder. The movements told a story: creation and destruction, violence and peace, death and rebirth. At the end of each practice, he spoke the words that Master Zhao had spoken at the end of every class for 40 years. The river does not fight the mountain, it simply becomes stronger than stone, and in the end, the river becomes the ocean. The students didn't always understand. Neither had Daniel when he first heard those words at 9 years old. But understanding would come. With time. With practice. With transformation. On the anniversary of Master Zhao's death, Daniel visited the temple where the funeral had been held. He lit incense before his teacher's memorial photograph and knelt in silence for an hour. When he rose, he found a young boy watching him from the doorway, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Angry eyes, clenched fists, the posture of someone carrying pain too heavy for his small frame. "Are you the kung fu teacher?" the boy asked. "I am. My mom said you could help me. She said you know how to make the anger go away." Daniel studied the boy carefully. He saw himself in that small face. The rage that had driven him into Master Zhao's academy 3 decades ago. The potential for violence that could consume everything if not channeled properly. He knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. "What's your name?" "James." "James, I can't make the anger go away. No one can do that for you. But I can teach you what to do with it, how to transform it into something that protects instead of destroys." "How long will that take?" Daniel smiled. "The rest of your life, but it's worth it, I promise." He extended his hand. The boy hesitated, then took it. Together, they walked out of the temple into the San Francisco sunshine. Teacher and student, past and future, the river that had finally become the ocean. Master Zhao had spent 40 years seeking redemption for the violence of his youth. Daniel had spent 3 months in prison, learning that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about transforming it into something meaningful. The academy would grow. Students would come and go. Some would find what they were seeking, others would struggle and eventually find different paths. But the legacy would continue. Generation after generation. Teacher passing knowledge to student. Violence becoming peace. Destruction becoming creation. This was what Master Zhao had always intended. Not a memorial, not a memory. A living, breathing continuation of everything he had learned through suffering and sacrifice. Daniel Chen had entered Black Rock Federal Penitentiary as a grieving brother who had broken the law to expose the truth about his sister's murder. He had emerged as something entirely different. A teacher, a healer, a bridge between the violence of the past and the possibility of a peaceful future. And somewhere beyond the veil that separates this world from whatever comes next, Master William Zhao watched his final student become everything he had hoped for. The river had become the ocean. The legacy was complete, and the story, though ending here, was truly just beginning.